In 2000, the greatest console was released and it changed the world forever. That console will be the main console for so many games we know and love today. That console is the PlayStation 2 or the PS2. For short. It had so many iconic games like GTA San Andreas, Resident Evil 4, Final Fantasy X, Call of Duty Black Ops 2, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. However, there was one game in particular that was just as iconic as those games. Let's take a look back to 2003 and relive the beauty of WWE SmackDown Here Comes the Pain on PlayStation 2. When I hear that, my body gets pumped and it makes me just want to kick some random kid's ass on the street. As a fan of the WWE and a fan of the Ruthless Aggression era, 2003 was probably my favorite year, with the rising of young stars like Randy Orton, John Cena, and Batista, and with some WCW talent that wasn't in last year's game. Dream matches could finally come true, and matches we didn't see on TV at the time, we could finally have them. The roster is stacked, with stars such as Brock Lesnar, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, Chris Jericho, Triple H, The Rock, American Badass Taker, Shawn Michaels, and so much more. And even with some WCW stars such as Booker T, Kevin Nash, Goldberg, Scott Steiner, and more. Legends were introduced for the first time, which included retired wrestlers like Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Roddy Piper, as well as current wrestlers with former gimmicks such as The Undertaker with his 1990s gimmick. It was also the last time that The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin would appear in a WWE game as non-legends. And it's the first WWE game to feature future superstars such as John Cena, Batista, and Rey Mysterio as playable characters. It was also the first game to have Kane without his mask, which was pretty cool. It is also known for being the only WWE game to feature Ultimo Dragon, who despite huge popularity in Japan and Mexico, otherwise only appeared in WCW. However, sadly, Hulk Hogan and Jeff Hardy wasn't in the game, but they could be created in Creative Wrestler or in Mod. The gameplay for this game is pretty fast, but when you get used to it, you're not even going to notice. New features include new grappling system, body damage display, and submission meters for both the person applying the move and the person breaking out of the move, as well as the ability to break submission holds when touching the ropes, and individual character skills that consisted of statistics such as strength, endurance, and speed were all introduced for the first time. It's arcadey type gameplay, but it's hella fun compared to nowadays wrestling video games where it's slow and strict about where you can place weapons or how you can use them. But in this game, if you wanted a chair on a table, you could. You want to have a ladder inside of a ladder? You could. You want to put someone through a ladder? Who is going to stop you? Anything went, it was your imagination. There was also no stamina, nor there were limited reversals. You could play with your friends with no limits and no restrictions, and you would never get tired. Something we don't get with new wrestling games, which is just disappointing. I just wish 2K put as much care that Ukes did for their WWE game. Oh, P.S. if you ever pick Brock Lesnar or Goldberg, you need to die. Those were the two most overpowered characters. Remember when I said your imagination is key? Well, I meant that. With the amount of match types, anything is possible. If you want to have a bra and panties match with your favorite divas, go right ahead. If you want to do a fatal 4-way ladder match, do it. If you want to have a tag team Hell in a Cell, be my guest. You want to have an elimination chamber match with your friends? Pop off. You get the point, right? Anything is possible. They have every match type you can ask for. They even have a personal favorite of mine, 2 out of 3 stages of Hell match, which is really fun. Also, they had backstage mode, which was wild. Your magic could really pop off in that mode. To be honest, they could have just gave us some cars in a parking lot, but nah, they went all out. They allowed us to fight in the steam room, in the parking lot, even outside, but that wasn't all. You was allowed to ride motorcycles and drag your opponents, and you could even fly a helicopter and jump from it. There was even a workout room where if you wanted fast finishers, you could just run on the treadmill and boom, you got instant finishers. And with your friends, it could only get better. I remember before COVID, I would play Elimination Chamber match with my friends, and it would take 4 hours just to finish a match. Well, unless you were Goldberg or Brock Lesnar. FYI, if you were, you're scum. They brought back Create a Wrestler, where you could create wrestlers not in the game like Jeff Hardy, Hulk Hogan, alongside his alter ego, Mr. America, and his 1980s appearance. Hogan and Hardy were removed from the game when they left WWE. Data for other wrestlers that were released or not in the game include Al Snow, Spike Dudley, Billy Kidman, Billy Gunn, William Regal, Bradshaw, Molly Holly, and 3 Minute Warning. They all remain on the final disc, but they don't have any finished character models. Season mode was brought back. Additional updates came in season mode, where decisions such as where you wanted to go and what you wanted to do next being made on a new menu screen in your locker room, while players could enter the general manager room and ask for title shots in Switch brand. You could also go around the map and see if there were wrestlers to talk to. Depending on what you chose, it could have been a good situation or a bad situation. There are multiple titles to go after depending on if you're on Raw or SmackDown. And it's funny because in 2K, you can't really do that. A game that came out 17 years later. But you could 17 years ago. Something else that I really love about this game is the graphic. Yes, the graphics were cartoony, but you could really tell who the wrestler was, unless you were Triple H. But you knew who that person was. There was also little things, such blood was introduced for the first time in the game. Also, just hitting a finisher. When you were hitting a finisher, it actually felt like it was gonna hurt. The screen shaking and then the crash animation just made it perfect. If you was Goldberg and you hit a spear, it looked like you ended a man's career. If you're a Brock Lesnar and you hit a F5, it looks like you broke his ribs. A Sweet Chin Music looked like you gave a player a concussion, etc. In spite it not being registered to be a simulation wrestling game, it feels more like a wrestling match when playing it than it does newer games. This game was the best of its time. Here Comes the Pain will always be considered the greatest wrestling game of all time. In my opinion, WWE 13 is my favorite wrestling game, but that was only because it was my first wrestling game. But hell, no matter where I go, no matter what websites I go to, and no matter who I ask, Here Comes the Pain is always up there with the greatest WWE games of all time. And hell, to some people, this is the greatest game they've ever played. I had fun playing this game. I had fun looking back on all the good shit you were able to do. Oh, this game was just perfection. Thanks for watching.